Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great to have you watching the show today. Today we are talking to Emma, who's based in Dublin. She's Irish and she is looking at buying a property in Spain. Hello, Emma, and thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Alex, for meeting me today and giving me some advice. I'm based in Dublin and I have a pension that's maturing. So I was thinking of drawing it down and using it as a deposit
Oh,
to
fantastic.
to buy a property. So I have a couple of questions for you that I'm hoping you can answer.
Certainly.
Um, yeah. I'm
So,
looking out at the Irish weather today. It's absolutely lashing. So it'd be nice to be thinking about somewhere warm for a change.
absolutely. So Emma, I'm an English solicitor and also a Spanish lawyer. I've been in Spain off and on for 30 years, and since 2003, I've been acting for international clients buying, selling, and inheriting property all over Spain. So we'd be delighted to act for you. And just tell me what areas are you interested in, Emma?
Well, we're thinking of somewhere south, maybe like Andalusia, because we're hoping to go in the shoulder season as well as the summer. So, late spring, early autumn, that kind of thing. So we're thinking of somewhere that we can get to Malaga easily because we still want to look at, culture and want to go to museums, but would like to live by the sea in a quieter part.
Okay, cool. That's great. So listen, the research and finding the house, that's kind of down to you. I'd recommend, I've got some tips for you, and actually I'll go through those tips, and I've got some questions for you to highlight this. Is this going to be a holiday home or a permanent move to Spain?
At first it'll be a holiday home. And then, maybe down, a couple of years down the road, we might look at it on a more permanent basis.
Okay, cool. So in effect, if you're buying a holiday home in Spain, then as an Irish national, and obviously Ireland's a member of the EU, you can spend 90 consecutive days in Spain. And after this period, you'll have to apply for residency. And applications are submitted to the local national police station, and you'll need money in the bank account of anywhere between 10,000 and 15,000 euros. And because you're not of retirement age yet, you'll just need some private medical insurance. But that's basically the residency. So you can come over to Spain, spend 90 days, and then you've got to start thinking about residency. Okay. So we talked about kind of where you're looking at and what kind of property are you looking for?
Oh, we're thinking of maybe a villa with a pool. I mean, that's the ideal, isn't it? We're also thinking that if we have our own space, we won't be paying management fees.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main reasons for looking at something like that.
Okay. And will you rent it out, or will it be a kind of a lock up and go?
Well, that will kind of depend on like capital gains tax and possibly inheritance. Like in Ireland, if you rent your property, you have to pay an awful lot more capital gains tax than if you don't. So I'd be interested to hear some of the rules around that. So like we don't need to rent it, but we could rent it. So it'll depend on, the rules around it, I suppose, in Spain or in
Sure.
Andalusia.
So the good news on the inheritance tax side, in effect, your direct heirs, so your husband and your children, can inherit property, and they will have an allowance of up to €1 million each. Okay, because you're married, you have children, you've got those allowances. The allowances aren't as generous if you leave them to unmarried spouses or partners or kind of stepchildren. But in effect, inheritance tax is not something you'd have to worry about. In Spain, each heir pays the tax. And in your case, if you left it to your children and your husband, then they would have €1 million allowance each, right? So that's good news. On the capital gains tax, in effect, what happens here is when you rent out a property, you pay 19% on the income, and all the costs of the rental are deductible. And then you would have to speak to your accountant in Ireland. And I do believe there's a double tax treaty between Ireland and Spain. So if you're a higher tax rate payer in Ireland, that 19% and the cost of the rental here, etc., would be deductible. So, but you would probably you've got to declare it first in Spain because this is where the income is generated, and then pay any top-up tax in Ireland. Okay, and as far as the property is concerned, What I would suggest you do is you kind of prepare a brief of your ideal property, and you contact agents in your chosen area to search for some of those properties. And now that I know you're kind of looking under in the areas, I'll also make some introductions to estate agents. Just so you're aware, that we are an independent firm of estate agents. We're not an estate agents, but we obviously, we have day-to-day dealings with estate agents because our clients buy through them. Some of the most popular websites to find a property are www.idealista.com and Kyero, which is kyero.com. And then also we've got the aplaceinthesun.com. And they've got properties all across Spain. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've stated you want to buy in Andalusia. So it's then important to set out your budget by considering, and basically Spain's got 17 autonomous regions. And the good news is you've chosen a region in Spain whereby the transfer tax, that tax that you'll pay on top of the purchase price, is low. It's actually 7% for a second-hand property.
Okay.
However, if you found a brand new property, a brand new villa with a pool, you would pay 10% tax on that. That's known as IVA, VAT. And then you'd also pay stamp duty, which is 1.2%. So generally what we would say, if you're buying a second-hand property, we'd say allow 10% on top of the purchase price to cover all costs, including legal fees. Legal fees are typically 1% of the purchase price plus that VAT, but that VAT is 21%. And then if you're buying so basically 10% for resale property, second-hand property, and then I'd increase this up to 14% for brand new properties. But if you have a look on our website, on our legal advice downloads, we've got all the different taxes payable set out according to the region. So, for example, 7% transfer tax for second-hand property in Andalusia, but you go up to Catalonia and Valencia, and that's 10%. And then if you go over to the Canaries, it goes down to 6.5%. Okay. So apart from that's the budgeting. So 10% second-hand property, 15% for a brand new property. Would you require finance, Emma? Do you require a mortgage at all?
Yes, probably. We, like, as I said, we have the deposit, and we have a bit put away, but we probably would be looking to mortgage the property as well.
Okay,
would
good.
you have any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd always recommend, rather than going to a bank directly, I'd recommend that you use an independent mortgage broker. We can make introductions to independent mortgage brokers. And typically you can borrow up to 65% of the loan to value, which means that you'll need a deposit of at least 35%. And then if you're buying that brand new property, on top of that, you need 15%. So you'll need a deposit of about 50%, right? It's 50% of the purchase price. Okay. And then also, listen, I'd always recommend that you speak to the mortgage broker up front before you come out to Spain looking for properties, so they can give you an idea of how much you can borrow. So you send them your income, you send them details of the deposit you've got, and say, look, this is how much I've got. How much can I borrow? And then when you've got that information, then you can come out to Spain and start offering on those properties.
Yeah. And when would we get you involved? Would it be from the get-go?
Yeah. So in effect, what we would do is we would send you terms of business, and typically we would put what's known as a power of attorney in place, right?
Yeah.
And this is a very important document. This document authorizes us to act for you in the purchase, so you don't have to keep on coming back to Spain. You can sign that before a notary in Ireland, and then that comes back to us, and then we can open a bank account for you here in Spain, which we'd recommend, so you can pay your direct debits. And we also apply for your N.I.Es, and the N.I.Es are your Spanish tax numbers. You can't buy a property without the N.I., and you can't open a bank account without the N.I. It's a Spanish tax number, which you pay tax on in Spain. Doesn't mean you're a resident. It just, you need that special number. So really that is the first step in the process, even before you buy a property. And then we would have your N.I. number with about 10 to 15 days. We could then open a bank account for you, and you're ready to go. And if you're going to borrow, then the bank will ask for that N.I. number as well.
Okay.
All right.
And you were saying you charge, is it 1%?
Yes.
Yeah. So you charge 1% on the purchase price of the property.
Exactly. Yeah. And you've got your finance in place, you get your legals in place by signing the power of attorney, speak to the mortgage broker. and then you're ready to go. But also, you know, it's always an interesting market. You know, when you're touring with the agent, I'd recommend that you basically ask the agent how long the property has been on the market for, why the sellers are selling, and if they've rejected or accepted any offers, to give you an idea. And I'd usually go in at least 10% below the asking price, just as a starter. If you start high, then you can't go low after. So I'd always kind of start low and then make your way up, you know?
Well, so what do I need to do next? Like if I want to move this along?
Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll send you our terms of business. And that will be, because you haven't found a property yet, Emma, we'll just basically, it's you and your husband buying. So we will send you costs to put in place that power of attorney and for 2 N.I.Es and open the bank account. And that's the first step. Okay. We'll send that through to you. You arrange a payment to our firm and we'll send you the power of attorney, book the appointment with the notary, and then we'll do the N.I.Es. And then really come out to Spain, look for the property. And then the buying process can take anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. So it is quite a quick process.
Very quick, yeah.
So that's why we kind of advise, you know, put that power of attorney in place, and if you need finance, speak to the bank up front. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a company in Ireland, and my husband's a director of it with me. Could we buy the property through the company?
You could do that. I would say most clients tend to buy in their own name rather than a company, because basically if you buy it in the name of a company, the company actually owns it, and you have to pay the market rent to the company to use it, and then you've got to pay tax on that, etc. So if you said to me, you know, Alex, I want to buy this property and we're going to rent it out full stop, then I'd say, you know, maybe look at putting it in the name of a company. But if you're going to rent it out a little bit and use it yourself, I'd say buy it in your own names.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
I know that there's probably, like, if we buy an apartment, there's management fees, but what other kind of recurring fees should we be taking into consideration if we were to buy a villa, for instance?
Yeah. So in effect, you're going to have, you know, the ongoing costs of ownership will be the town hall rates, known as the IBI. On a property, say, worth 500K, you'd be looking at town hall rates of approximately €1,000. Insurance, you know, home and contents insurance, €300 to €500 a year. Again, you mentioned if you buy an apartment, you'll have homeowners association fees. So that you know, the agent and us would be able to advise you what those would be when you found a property. And then the year after you've purchased, you pay what's known as the non-resident income taxes, which is a tax purely on ownership of a property. Again, say based on a property you're buying a property anywhere between 200 and 500,000 euros, you'd be looking at that non-resident income tax of about €300 a year. But that's payable the year after completion. So it's really not something really to worry about too much. And then of course you'll be paying water and electric fees.
Yeah, of course. Cool. You've answered loads of questions. Any final tips for us?
The final tips, Emma, would be basically I'd recommend that you put that Spanish will in place. So you have an Irish will for your Irish assets and a Spanish will for your Spanish assets, and they work together, because the first clause of an Irish will is I revoke all former wills. So basically, once you've got both wills in place, we'd say, and if you updated your Irish will, you'd say I revoke all former wills except my Spanish will dated X. And then basically the Spanish will operates in the event of anyone passing. It makes it much quicker and cheaper to administer the estate, and you know, when the time comes. But that would be my final tip. And also, you know, the agents will always tell you it's all about location.
Yeah, of course.
Well, listen, Emma, thank you ever so much for those questions. What I'll do is I'll send you our firm's terms of business. And then if you've got any other questions throughout the conveyancing process, you come back to us. Typically, when clients find a property, they will ask us to look at the reservation agreement before you sign it. So I'd strongly advise you to do that, send that through to us. And obviously, you know, if you wanted a survey, if you wanted to make subject to survey, then we would put that in that contract. So definitely, you know, before you sign that reservation contract, give us a call.
We will. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emma. All the best. Bye now.
See you then. Bye-bye.